Alright guys, such comic again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So far, this roster period continues to get leery with major updates over the last couple of hours as to what these top teams are going to do. Reports suggest JoeDeceives is a key piece of this Rostermania puzzle. Toronto want to keep him. Other top teams may well want his services, including, it seems, the Los Angeles Thieves. They may well be looking to drop Envoy, bring in JoeDeceives, but if they don't get Joe, they're looking at other candidates as well. Big drama on the timeline today. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, let us begin. Just quickly on the coaching stuff from EWC, there was a bit of drama on this. One of the pieces of drama was this. You guys might remember at last year's World Championship, there were plenty of rumours that accuracy was, let's say, helping out the OpTic team a little bit in their preparation because they'd had a stinky Major 4. Accuracy had experience with Kenny, he had experience with Pred, and he stepped into a bit of a consultation role and helped turn their team around, it seemed anyway, for the World Championship that they eventually won. No one ever talks about it because technically he was still contracted to Rocker, so, you know, presumably there was maybe some sort of issue there if that became public, but it was pretty funny because Attach and Simp were talking about it on stream, and Attach was like, oh, you better not say that, brother. And then, of course, it got clipped and put on the timeline. But speaking of coaches, Karma was talking about it, what happened back at the World Cup. As he says, haven't said much about it, but I love being on stage for EWC. Little slow at first, but it grew on me. So very interesting to hear this from Karma, because I wonder what the other coaches think, and also what the CDL thinks about it. I would say that the community was pretty 50-50 before the tournament began on whether this is a good idea or not. I was in favour of trying it because why not, right? Something new to look at. There were good reasons why it could have been problematic, but I think that the majority of the community would look at the World Cup and say, you know what, I actually preferred it with the coaches on stage than without. And I'm also in that camp. I think that it should probably at least be trials for the first couple of majors of the CDL season to see if there are any kind of unforeseen issues that maybe need it to get removed. But it's something to think about, and Karma's down for it. And it's interesting, right? Because the coaches, I would think, would be the ones almost that would be most against it, in the sense that they've got to do more work, right? Like, it's more work for the same pay, presumably. Maybe they'd prefer, though, to stand there on the main stage behind the players and could talk to them rather than being stuck behind the scenes, basically struggling to keep their hair intact because of the stress. I imagine it's, you know, definitely a problem. Karma, they said a few things. It was fun. On top of it being a new experience, I had to get used to not being a codcaster merchant. So I thought that was a pretty interesting observation. And he says that it's not really affecting the skill gap of the players. 99% of the time, they still have to get themselves out. They still have to get themselves out of the hole, right? They know how to do that because of where they've been in practice. Majority of the work is on them. One person won't fix bad comms from 4 people. It's a skill that you need to do well in gaming. So pretty interesting from Karma. He seems pretty pro keeping this around for the CDL. We'll see what, if anything, they decide to do. Now, bit of drama starting here, actually. So there was this post that Viper put out, his predictions for some of the rosters. And, well, we'll see about some of these predictions. But there was talk about whether Ravens are going to be there or not. And, well, we heard rumours a while ago that Ravens were likely to go, Boston maybe were going to go, but obviously over the last couple of months we've started to see many indications in Boston they ain't going anywhere. But Ravens, I think we expected as an organisation probably to be dusted because there is plenty of interest in getting into this league. But for that to happen would seemingly require either mergers or buyouts, and the CDL will have to approve it. And if the teams don't necessarily want to sell, they're maybe happier with their current circumstance because the franchise fees have now been waived and all this. Maybe they're just going to tell any potential investor, you know what, we're kind of down to stay and keep running it up, baby. And that seems to be what's happening. Now, of course, you would then suggest, well, okay, if Ravens aren't getting sold, if Boston aren't getting sold, could we not just expand the league? Because there are definitely organizations out there that want to get involved. Couple of Saudi orgs, couple of orgs as well. But according to the latest rumors, there are probably going to be no changes to the organizations going into next year, which I think would be a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. Now, BenJ also tweeted this out. There are quite a few twists and turns left in this Rostermania. Teams are far from settled at the moment, as the buyout process for some key targets continued. Those key targets aBeZy, presumably, but also, as we'll see in a second, JoeDeceives. But speaking of aBeZy, I've got to share this because it was very juicy happening over the last couple of hours. We know that BenJ has been pretty critical, maybe an understatement, I don't know, of aBeZy's play in recent times. We know that BenJ's boys would sell, and look, I'll say it again, whatever you think of BenJ, love him or loathe him, the scene is more entertaining for him being in the scene. So I'm down. And anyway, we know that aBeZy and BenJ not necessarily seen eye to eye, BenJ calling out him not winning enough spiral gunfights and all this stuff. And I respect that Ben just stands 10 toes on his opinions. You know, he was never a COD pro. Is he good at COD? No. But he's got his takes on competitive COD, and he is going to stand on business. And this is what he does. So he's been critical of aBeZy. He said the other day that he thinks aBeZy was, you know, maybe Cellium's playstyle to some degree, but aBeZy was a key reason. Like, his impact in hardpoint was not as much as some of the other SMGs, and aBeZy comes in the replies and says, you know, Ben's basically the biggest cocksucker of all time, Roman S&D, triple question marks, this guy doesn't even understand a lick of COD, LMAO. So that's what he drops in there anyway, and then we get some replies. BenJ then says, rent-free, I guess. So, you know, we've got, it's incredible, isn't it, right? Mercules comes in the league and the whole FaZe family is just at each other's necks. We've got BenJ, we've got aBeZy going at each other. Even Octane was in the reply saying that he's been slandering him, so you're getting what you deserve type thing. You know, it was all going on. There was a very funny clip up at the end of the video as well that BenJ was declaring war on these guys. Actually, you know what, I'll just share it for you guys now and then we'll get into the Rostermania stuff because, you know, the entertainment does not stop from this guy.
Absolutely talked about Simp needs to fucking absolutely get on back on his bullshit. The only reason I'm talking about this now is because Tyler's going to other people's chat talking shit about me. So you know what? I'm going to fucking return the favor, baby. I don't give a fuck.
I love you.
MC doesn't get a pass either, bro. Nobody gets a pass on that team.
Over to you for a second.
Zero
you
passes.
Seem so energetic today. It means so much to you. Can you tell me in your own words why this one is so special?
You know what? Listen, if we're gonna do this chat, let's do this, okay? All right, we're gonna do this. aBeZy finished the 2025 season with the worst hardpoint KD, fewest kills per 10, least time in the hill, least damage per 10 on FaZe. Your aggressive sub player on your team was the one who wasn't getting kills, wasn't getting interactions, wasn't getting in the hill, and wasn't shooting their gun. So what exactly are they doing on the map, okay? The last 3 events of the season, Champs, Major 4, and Esports World Cup. These are the S&D rankings, right? First Bloods. aBeZy on this list is somewhere in the middle. 30th, right? The highest on FaZe as far as First Bloods, and they really struggled to get First Bloods and O's at the end of the season, was fucking Zach. Zach was first on the team with 16. Okay, and it's even worse when I show you this stat, bro.
Yo, Ben, are you cooking aBeZy?
Yeah, I'm going. We're pulling out the receipts right now.
So let's talk Rostermania. Which teams are changing? What's going to happen next? There was, of course, discussion on the rumours that Thieves are interested in getting Cellium on the team instead of Ghosty. That would be controversial if it happens. And according to Taylor, who was in Attach's chat earlier, said that basically the offer is good. They gave a very good offer to Cellium. Now, what is a very good offer for Thieves? How much money is a very good offer? Because he's seemingly a total free agent. They could get him for free if they, you know, they can get him for free in terms of no buyout. But of course, you can't get him for free. You got to pay him something to pay for your team. And also, Falcons, we think, are still in the fight. Interesting that we've not heard that much about Falcons yet. All we see is some reports that suggest that, well, they're in the conversation with this player, in the conversation with that player. And look, I don't know what Thieves could offer Cellium. It would probably be quite substantial, but it wouldn't be what Falcons could potentially offer Cellium, one would well presume. So if Cell got a very good offer, is he going to sign the dotted line immediately, or is he going to be more careful and say, you know what, let me speak to my other options before I decide exactly where I'm going to go? Understandably, there would be big questions on whether a Cellium Scrappy lineup from an AR perspective would work, and also what it would mean for the SMGs, because Envoy would have to be the absolute hill kitten in that scenario, and would have a lot of dirty work to do, if you want to call it that. But Envoy may not be there to do that because they might drop him as well. And that's been the big rumor of the last few hours, is that despite the fact that seemingly the quartet wanted to stay together, the management has other ideas. There were many comments from the community that maybe dropping Ghosty was the wrong man to get rid of. They should have got rid of Envoy instead or whatever. I actually think Envoy was pretty damn good this season. I think there's a fair bit of recency bias in play to say that he wasn't that good. I actually think he had a very solid season overall, given his role on the team. You know, he had really many great moments, I'd say, this season, Envoy. But could you try something else? Could you try and get better? Maybe it's worth a conversation. So BenJ says, none of the teams are locked. It will come out soon why that is the case. Now, exactly what BenJ means is a bit of a question, but I'd say that he may well be talking about the interest in JoeDeceives. So, JoeDeceives is meant to be Toronto's piece. He is the guy they want to build around. But apparently there is interest in him from a number of different teams. Toronto is aware of his value. We know that Toronto will sell if the price is right. But also, they have a great opportunity here, Toronto, to build a team that might finally be capable of winning champs. They've come close over the last few years. They've not done it. This is a time that Ultra genuinely have a chance, I would say, to build a team that can really compete and potentially go all the way. If you let JoeDeceives go, I think the fans would really have something to say about that, because he's been one of the key pieces that's improved dramatically in the league over the last couple of years, but the price would have to be right. Sources say Gentlemates are interested. Don't count Gentlemates out of this conversation either, right? Because we know they've got bread. They tried to get Scrap and HyDra last year. They nearly did it. But are they the most appealing organisation to go and play for? Probably not. But the other two names are big. FaZe and Thieves have also emerged as serious contenders, though Toronto's front office, known for tough negotiations and rarely selling unless the timing is right, will likely make any potential deal difficult. And I would say it is possible that these negotiations drag on for another week and then Toronto eventually decide to keep him anyway. So this Rostermania period is so very far from over that it's almost ridiculous, right? We've been a week since the EWC is over, and we've still got questions like this. And, well, it seems that FaZe and Thieves are trying to see if they can get JoeDeceives, including Gentlemates. They may be bidding each other up. Toronto may say yes to an offer, or they may not. And then those teams might come back even harder to try and get Joe. But the bottom line is that we think Thieves are looking to replace Envoy. That's what Ghost of Hope comes out with, and of course I will say as a bit of a caveat, K-Sun's in the replies and saying, you know, who are your sources for these reports? So, because we know that Ghost of Hope initially said they're going to stick, then he was like, no, actually they're going to change, and now he's doubling down on that. So, look, I think when Ghost of Hope says it, there's definitely some truth to this. Whether it's actually going to happen is a very different question, but you know, if Ronnie is saying that Thieves are interested in JoeDeceives, and they're not interested in JoeDeceives to replace Ghosty, are they? You would imagine it would likely be to replace Envoy. So that implies that Thieves, at least the management over there, have selected that getting rid of Ghosty and Envoy is a likely direction, and they will look to get, presumably, Cellium for Ghosty, and one of these three for Envoy. And, well, the question's very interesting. They could go and get Neptune, hypothetically. Whether they would want to do that, I'm not so convinced. But he is free, like he's a free agent. They wouldn't have to pay a buyout to get Neptune if they wanted to get Neptune. I don't really see that. I rate Neptune very highly, but I don't see that HyDra-Neptune duo working or really going to plan. I would prefer Envoy than I would Neptune for what that team needs, in my opinion. There is an argument for Joe. There is a good argument for Joe. The aBeZy one is interesting because, like, you know, aBeZy to step in, again, you are just fully stacking talent at that point and just praying it works. And it might work, but you're also running the risk on some comms stuff. I'm not convinced by this. I'm really not convinced that replacing Envoy is a good idea, full stop. And certainly by a couple of the names in the conversation. But reports suggest that they're going to look to replace Envoy, and these are the three guys. Now, as I say, Neptune, you could get him on a free. JoeDeceives and aBeZy would require a buyout to make this happen. So, you know, it'd be really interesting if Thieves did it, just because they don't necessarily have to, but they may well do. So, fascinated to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What's going to happen, right? Because FaZe are also in the convo. FaZe want to pair JoeDeceives with Simp, I'd imagine. aBeZy possibly wants to join JoeDeceives on Toronto, or maybe he will go somewhere else if JoeDeceives goes to Thieves, or maybe aBeZy goes to Thieves to partner HyDra, right? There's so many options right now, it's difficult to really wrap your head around. And that's what Simp is implying here, right? He's, doing the whole Doctor Strange, there's however many million possible futures, and there's only one that's going to end up being reality. So what does that mean for FaZe? It's tough to diagnose right now, but all we can say is, well, what we've said so far, that JoeDeceives is a key piece of this Rostermania period, and that does not seem especially set to change. So that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Very much enjoyed your thoughts, as always, on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.